With less than 2 days to go for the all-important G20 Leaders Summit, discussions on the communique have taken the final form. The Chinese and the Russian side have officially confirmed that the Chinese president and the Russian president won't be attending the summit in person, but they will be represented by their country's premier and the foreign ministers, respectively. To discuss the impact of absence of Xi and Putin, we are joined by former Ambassador Mr. Dilip Sinha. Welcome to the show, sir. So let me begin by asking you this very basic question. Do you think the absence of Xi and Putin will have a significant impact on the outcome of the G20 summit?
See, the absence of Russia and China will certainly have an impact both on the current summit and on the future of G20. The G20 was, as you know, set up as a cross-regional body where the heads of the leading economies of the world could meet, deal with some dominant global crisis. The G20 was formed in the wake of the Asian financial crisis at finance ministers level, and then it was upgraded to a summit level when the global financial crisis broke out in 2007-2008. And then this organization played a very important role during the COVID pandemic when the global economy was very badly hit. So this is the organization at this top level of the leading economies of the world has played a very prominent role in ensuring that countries of the world act in coordination, act in unison when it comes to the major crises. Now, today we have some big crises in the world. We have the Ukraine war going on, which has divided the world. We have the climate change crisis.
Right.
We have, of course, the ongoing economic crisis caused both by the pandemic and by the Ukraine war. So the world is going through a difficult phase. Now, the other thing is that the world is also got very highly polarized. And this polarization had begun even before the Ukraine war because of the lopsided globalization that had taken place and because of the rise of China as a superpower, which America did not like, and China's trade practices, which strained the global trading system because of the huge surpluses that China built in its trade. Now, so that crisis, that problem was there even before the Ukraine war. Then came the Ukraine war, which very sharply divided the world into two parts, with Russia supported by China on one side and the West on the other. Now, last year at the Bali summit, there was a joint declaration which referred to the Ukraine war, which Russia had accepted. Now, it seems that this year, Russia has taken a much harder stance, supported by China, and been insisting that even what was agreed upon at Bali is no longer acceptable to it. And then, of course, there are internal problems in Russia because of which President Putin did not come to India. And it seems now President Xi also has serious internal problems, his economic problems, as well as the bilateral issues that he has with India, which have gone to making him also decide that he's now going to come to India.
Okay,
which means that the two major countries in the East are not coming here to the G20 meeting, which means that the bipolarization of the world is now reflected in the G20 participation.
Okay, Ambassador, if I may intervene, in the past we have seen that G20 meetings have actually produced something called the joint declaration or the joint communique. And what we are understanding till now is that this time there would be no joint communique, but it will be a chair summary. So, Ambassador, can you just tell us the nuances of this and how this will be detrimental to the overall functioning of the summit?
Well, most conference should end in a joint declaration to be adopted by the leaders who participate in it. The last conference at Bali adopted a joint declaration, including a couple of paragraphs on the Ukraine war. Now, if there is no agreement at a meeting among the participants, then the practice is for the chairperson, to adopt what is called a chairman's summary. Now, a chairman's summary is not an agreed document. It is a document that reflects the views of the various participants in the meeting.
Okay.
So if there are groups of countries representing a certain view, then it says one group said this, the other group said this, and then the document is not adopted really. It is just presented by the chair to the meeting, and the meeting just accepts it. So it is really a poor substitute and an acceptance of the fact that the meeting has not been able to come to any agreement on the document.
So, yeah, I mean, I think you have explained this very well. So, do you think it'll have any, implications on the summit itself? The country is not able to arrive at a consensus. So, do you think it'll have a implication on the broader summit and going forward?
Yes, of course, because you see, it shows that the countries are not prepared to come to even a minimum understanding on the crises that are facing the world today, and for which they had come to meet.
Right.
This would, I think, be the first time when a G20 summit would fail to adopt a declaration.
That's right.
Now, what normally happens is that if there is a divisive issue, then that issue is left out of the declaration.
Mm-hmm.
And the declaration contains what the leaders were agreed upon.
Okay.
But this time, clearly the positions of the various countries have become so hardened,
right,
that on one particular issue, which is the Ukraine war, neither side is prepared to bend. So one side says that the Ukraine war has to be included,
mm-hmm.
and it has to be included with the paragraph that was adopted at Bali. And the other side says, no, it cannot be. If the Ukraine war para is to be included, then it must contain the viewpoint of the Russian side.
So, Ambassador, just for the clarity of our viewers, the Ukraine war, the statement on Ukraine war, that is the major thaw, right?
I think that is, although I'm reading in the press that there are also differences among the leaders, among the countries, on issues like debt relief,
mm-hmm.
Which is an area which is very important for this.
That's right.
This summit, especially in refinancing multilateral development banks and in providing debt relief to highly indebted countries because of various factors. And it seems even on climate change, there are some differences, but these differences are not strong enough to merit an all-out conflict between the two sides and lead to the absence of a joint declaration. But the Ukraine war is an issue on which both sides have dug in and say it is either this or nothing.
Ambassador, coming to India's presidentship, it has been almost a year that India has been the president or rather the presidency of the G20. Do you think it has done enough in few of the pricking points which which warranted a consensus?
I'm sure we would have tried our level best to bring the sides together and get them to agree upon these issues. India has been very forceful. India has been presenting viewpoints in a very balanced way, whether it is the viewpoint of the West or the developing countries, or it is the viewpoint of the Russian side. It has been trying to ensure that the Ukraine war does not impinge upon the G20 outcome documents. So in all these meetings that you see, you find that the meetings at the ministerial levels have managed to adopt consensus documents, with the paragraph on the Ukraine war being left as chairman's summary. So that is the best possible outcome that any host would have hoped to achieve. But now we have to see whether this formula can work in the summit, or whether the countries would insist upon only their viewpoint being represented or nothing at all.
Ambassador Sinha, if we got to talk about the bilaterals, specifically the bilaterals, when it comes to these, these global forums and global summits, on the sidelines of these global forums or global conclaves, there are very important bilaterals which happen. It might not be necessarily between India and Russia or India or China. It might be between other developing or developed countries, so to say. So, do you think the absence of Putin and Xi will play a role in these bilaterals, getting weakened?
Certainly, a multilateral meeting is a forum where uh, two countries whose leaders have not been able to meet to resolve their differences bilaterally, not been able to visit each other's country, get an opportunity to meet in the sidelines of these multilateral meetings. And that often uh, provides the core in their relations. We have seen that happen in the case of India-Pakistan relations, where our leaders met in the sidelines of NAM meetings and other meetings. So it can lead to a thaw by letting leaders meet in an informal atmosphere in a third country. Uh, and that is the kind of thing that we require today in the case of the Ukraine war or in the case of the India-China uh, confrontation. Uh, but the absence of Putin means that there'll be no opportunity of Biden meeting Putin, and President Biden himself has expressed his disappointment that President Xi Jinping will not be there, so he's lost his opportunity of meeting him. So the various points of tension that you have in the world today, whether it is Russia, US, India, China, US, uh, these opportunities have been lost because of the absence of these two leaders at the summit.
Okay, Ambassador, if we were to talk about India, India per se, do you think what is that one particular stance that India would be driving through in these 2 days?
For India, the most important things have been the reform, refinancing the multilateral development banks to ensure that there is sustainable finance available to developing countries. And this is also linked to climate change, because climate finance is a very important part of finance today. So where the industrialized countries have not met their commitments. So this was one area where India was very keen that at the summit level, some kind of a declaration should be made to enable the other international organizations to then start working on ensuring that finance is available. Then there is food security, which is also extremely important, which of course is linked both to climate change and to the Ukraine war. Because there is food prices have risen all over the world, and something needs to be done on this. And India had hoped that the summit meeting would be able to give some kind of a guidance to the rest of the world on how the leaders and how the countries are proceeding to deal with this crisis.
Ambassador, when we talk about the global financial condition or the global financial detriments, even the IMF chief has mentioned that China, being a very, very important player, their absence in the meeting would, actually, impact some of the discussions on debt refinancing, debt restructuring, and so on and so forth. So, how do you see this?
Well, yes, when it comes to debt uh, relief and debt refinancing, China is the holdout country because the Western countries, which are members of the Paris Club, during the COVID pandemic, had given a lot of debt relief, had suspended debt repayment, and many of them had given debt interest relief as well. But China had refused to do that, and China's debt practices are usurious. So it is important that China be present in these meetings with the IMF, and some kind of an agreement comes forward to enable these countries that are indebted to China get some relief. But if the absence of the top leader will mean that China will not be able to take any major initiative or make any major concession at this summit.
And also, sir, coming to my last question, so I mean, there have been reports but I won't go into the veracity of those claims. There have been reports saying that it was a deliberate attempt by the Chinese to actually, scuttle India's moment of fame. So, how do you read into it?
Well, I would agree with this kind of speculation. It is speculation because China has kind of said that it supports the G20 and it wants the meeting to go ahead. But the fact that President Xi was visiting South Africa just the other day, both on a bilateral meeting and to attend the BRICS summit, and then has not found time to come to India, shows that his problem is not only with the G20, where there is polarization, but also with India bilaterally. Because no matter how much of a difference one has with the organization, when a friendly country is hosting a meeting, then you attend that meeting. And the fact that China has chosen to stay away from it means that it is not prepared to see India take center stage in a world body like the G20. This is clearly a snub to India.
So thank you, Ambassador, so much for shedding light and your insights as we are, approaching the all-important G20 meet.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.